Hi, welcome to Beyond the Filter. I'm your host, Liz Ryerson, and I'm here with Narcissa Wright, a well-known speedrunner of the video game variety. Hi, Narcissa.
Hello.
So do you want to explain? I mean, I assume that like most people who are listening to this probably follow video game stuff and know what speedrunning is, but do you want to just explain quickly what speedrunning is?
Yeah, so you're trying to beat a game really fast. And sometimes there's like interesting ways to do it. And sometimes there's like a lot of research and stuff that goes into it. Other times it's more of like a kind of a technical feat, and there's like stories to be told along the way.
What are the stories? Like what?
I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things that just kind of happen over time, like how the routes evolve, or like how certain time barriers get broken over time.
So it's like you like, depending on what game, right? You're like, you and other people who are presumably in the speedrunning community are mapping routes to find like the fastest route, and a lot like goes into the sort of the research, right? Of like investigating. And so you speedran Zelda Ocarina of Time and a bunch of other games too, but that I guess is the most like famous one. So how many people like when you were really doing that were like in the community just like looking for bugs and glitches to exploit, or like really sort of investigating deeply into trying to find like the fastest route into the game, but maybe weren't necessarily speedrunners? Or I don't know, how many people were just doing that?
Back in like 2005, it seems like there was maybe, I don't know, maybe like a dozen people, and it just kept growing. And some people like dropped off, like there's some old names that you don't see anymore, but that number definitely grew over time, and like a lot of people have influenced the game by finding things or discovering things or like contributing in some way. And I can't really put a number on that, but it's been like a lot of people.
So what attracts you to speedrunning specifically? What is sort of the is it the sort of competitive nature? Is it exploring like old video games you love and sort of breaking them? What like attracted to you? What attracted you to it like initially?
I don't think it was competition that attracted me to it. I think it was more of that second thing that you just said about, well, not necessarily breaking a game, but like breaking games can be really interesting too, but just kind of exploring a game that I love and like really understanding it, I guess.
Okay. And when did you get started?
Well, I messed around a little bit with like Perfect Dark like a long time ago, and like I don't know, maybe the year 2001.
So Perfect Dark had a mode where you could record there was like an actual timer in that game, right? Like you could.
Oh yeah, so it would keep track of your best times, and you could actually turn on a timer that would display on the screen, so you could like. It's just for like individual levels. Like you would just beat one mission. Yeah.
So from my understanding, I don't know, from having followed speedrunning, is like, I feel like I'm not sure if this is completely accurate. There might be other lineages of it, but the games like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom had sort of par times in the levels, and if you completed under the par time, you got like a bonus. And Wolfenstein 3D, that gave you more points, and you were trying to get points. It was like driven by that. But like Doom, it wasn't driven by that. So, but they had a way to like record. It still recorded your level times, and there was a way to like use this sort of
record demos.
Yeah, the demo software that came, that was just part of the game, and then export the demos and share them with people. And like that's my impression is that's where like a lot of speedrunning started, a lot of people sharing times, and then like it feels like a lot of people got involved with Goldeneye.
Yeah, Goldeneye had a similar par time thing where you unlock the cheats, and then Perfect Dark also had that.
Yeah,
I just remember like kind of looking forward to Perfect Dark, and then I got it, and then I was just like on the internet when I was really young, and there was like a community of people doing stuff, and I remember at one point someone figured out you can like fall through the first level and beat it like in like less than 20 seconds, less than 10 seconds. It got really short down to like, well, now it's I think 5 seconds, but there's other like discoveries like that were kind of cool.
So,
but also just like moving around was like fun, and like I wasn't really good. I was like really young, but I was just like just getting into it, and it was something that like I messed around with.
Yeah, so it was initially just driven by the game, like being like, well, you have to run as fast as you can through these levels to unlock whatever cheat, and that was like just a mode of Goldeneye and Perfect Dark. But it seems like speedrunning, a lot of the communities that happen online sort of grew outside of that, and people, you know, started following kind of speedrunning outside of, you know, games that recorded your times or whatever and doing their own thing. So when did that, I don't know, when did you, do you know like a lot about when that specifically started and when that sort of shift from just like speedrunning around Goldeneye or Perfect Dark or Doom or something shifted into like people picking old games and things that they loved and just recording, and then, you know, also like trying to agree upon standards about how they do the timing and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, there's so much to that. I think those games that did have the timers built in definitely drove like a lot of people to try it out, and then that naturally grew into different communities. Running games that did not do that, I don't know the history of it too much really, but I know some longer games actually, you know, still recorded your time for like the entire playthrough. Like
that's true.
Like
yeah.
I think Metal Gear Solid does that. I know like Resident Evil did that, and like
Silent Hill does that.
Yeah. There's another game I was thinking of, I forgot. But yeah, I mean you could do it for any game, really. You just need to use real time instead. Well, people, I don't know, people started to do, like back then, like a long time ago, when it didn't record your time or anything, I guess people were still interested in other games, but you couldn't record for long periods of time very easily, so they'd break it into segments. So they do like segmented speedrunning, where you like play a section of it and record it. Then once you get it right, like repeatedly retrying it, then move on to the next segment, then submit all the videos as like one thing. But then that kind of fell out of favor later on. But
I still see segmented speedruns, but they don't seem to be as much of a thing now.
I think, well, oh god, I feel like I actually had kind of a impact here with like, once we started Speedruns Live. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead really far.
Yeah, okay, so when did you join like the speedrunning community, and how did you like get involved, and you know, what were you involved with?
Okay, so like that Perfect Dark thing I did was kind of isolated. I mean, I was reading the message boards and stuff, but like I was not really interfacing with the community much. And then later I found out there was times for like Beetle Adventure Racing for N64. So like in 2004, I would do like time trial mode on Mount Mayhem, and actually recorded my run on VHS tape and then mailed it to Twin Galaxies, because they were supposed to be like the, you know, the official scoreboard.
Yeah, and I mean, if anyone who's listening has ever seen King of Kong, the movie King of Kong, they're like the sort of official rule keepers and scoreboards of specifically old arcade games. And I guess they've been around.
They tried to do a whole bunch of different platforms and games, but like the stuff they did with arcade was like a lot more iconic. And actually there's a very recent controversy over some arcade times that may have been faked or something. So like there's like recent drama like this year.
Yeah, there always seems to be drama around that. I mean, the whole the whole story of King of Kong is just revolving around different kinds of drama in those communities, and it just reminds me so much of being in online communities as a kid and and a teen, and all the like drama that those attracted. But yeah,
it's
anyway.
a pretty fun, juicy piece of drama, because like this time in Dragster, that was apparently the record, this arcade game. Apparently the time was like actually impossible, and then it was like verified to be impossible via tool assisted, like looking into it closely, trying every possible combination or something, and then kind of like exposing this score on Twin Galaxies as like fraudulent after like 20 years or something. It's like it just recently happened.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So it'd been on there for like a really long time. Yeah, and there's like so many weird. So I know that like a lot of this stuff probably started initially. Like I know Nintendo in particular, probably more than anyone else. Maybe Atari did this too, honestly, during the the heyday of arcade machines, like in the late 70s and early 80s, which is where most of the big famous arcade games that are run in those or that people try to get high scores in those records were made, like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that was all in the late 70s early, and they had competitions, I know, where they would, and usually it was about high score, but I also know like in Japan they probably, well, in the Japan and the US, Nintendo also had a lot of competitions. They had the Nintendo World Championship, and I think maybe some of that was based around I don't know the exact history, but I think some of it was based around running through stuff as fast as you can. Like the movie The Wizard actually has them playing through Super Mario Brothers 3, and I think the whole point, maybe they're trying to get the highest score, I don't know, but or maybe
I'm not actually too familiar with it.
Yeah, but I guess at a certain point the high score thing, especially with home consoles, kind of transitioned over into trying to complete things the fastest. And like shows like there's that Nick Arcade show on Nickelodeon, and I guess like some of it was about getting the high score, but sometimes it's about completing things at a certain time. So this stuff has always been around. I mean, I guess it's already an inherent aspect of video games, and it's an inherent test of skill to see how fast you can get through stuff. And
it just reminded me of the Seinfeld episode where it's like the Frogger high score or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He has it set a Frogger high score on one of the machines or something, and wants to preserve it. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing. It's still a thing. Like go to like a barcade or something, a place where there's a lot of people playing it and trying to set the high score. And arcade games have kind of come back a little bit. I think there's like they have their kind of own niche interests.
Some of those arcade games with the high scores, it's like, depending on how the game is made, like, either the high score could be completely maxed out, or it was trivial to stay alive forever, so like it was a test of endurance, like 70 hours of playing or something. So sometimes the high score stuff is a little bit, I don't know. High score as like a skills test can be good depending on the game.
Yeah, well, one thing that I remember with Wolfenstein 3D, which I actually speedran with my friend back a while ago, and he's like one of the people who kind of discovered the technique in Wolfenstein 3D where you can just let get the guards to manipulate their AI to just open doors for you, which was used by the person whoever has the record now. And
it's fun to discover things.
Yeah, and like there were also other sort of level shortcuts that were more obvious that we discovered at the time, but like we had also, or he in particular, had tried to do high score runs because you could balance it in such a way to where if you still got under the par time, you got a big bonus, but then like if you got 100% on everything, you would theoretically get a smaller bonus than if you got a good par time, but then some of the things that you needed to collect. So like trying to find that like balance of ratio was actually really interesting to try and get the high score, and that's like something that, you know, would require a lot of like research and math. So that was really cool. But like
that actually reminds me of when the game Super Monkey Ball and Super Monkey Ball 2 came out, you can get a high score for each level, and so it's based on like how fast you do the level, but also if you pick up bananas you get some points. So like there's like trade-offs between doing the level faster or collecting more bananas. It's kind of similar to that, I guess.
Yeah, and you can kind of infinitely try and figure that stuff out. But with Wolfenstein, there just wasn't enough people interested. I mean, the game was already old by the point we were doing this. It was like, you know, 2000. It was 2000 or 2001, and this is around the time that like Goldeneye and Perfect Dark were popular, and you know that stuff was popular. So anyway,
oh, and after so I guess to follow up on that first question, still is that after the Beetle Adventure Racing stuff, which was also kind of isolated, I really got involved with community with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So
when was that?
Well, I was reading the threads in like 2005, 2006, and then I started posting. I was reading in 2006. It was really fascinating because they started to figure out some more intensive sequence breaks, being able to do certain things that were thought to be impossible, such as getting to Gerudo's Fortress as a child.
Wait, so what website was this on?
So there's forums on Speed Demos Archive.
Okay, Speed Demos Archive. Yeah, and they've been around for a pretty long time.
Yeah,
right?
and that's like where a lot of the speedrunning discussion was at that point in time, especially like console games.
So so the speedrunning community existed for a while, but it was fairly niche at that point.
Yeah. Oh, and then in 2005, YouTube was around. Because before that, people had to like, you know, upload videos to their whatever.
I remember people doing that with Goldeneye, and they were always like really low quality videos, and they took forever to download. And
yeah, the internet was much less developed.
So where did things go from there when you were reading those threads in like 2005?
Well, people started to make YouTube accounts where they would start to like post different things that they found. And at that point, there was already like the sub 5-hour run by TSA, which was like, it was like, oh, this legendary run of Ocarina of Time, the first time it's ever been under 5 hours. And pushing it much lower than that seemed really hard because like no one else was running it very seriously. There's very few runners.
Really small amount of people running this game, and this is like in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And so presumably there were people who were running Ocarina of Time, but it was like a small since it came out, but it was like a small community. So
yeah, it seems like people had different projects they wanted to maybe do with it, but a lot of people were just kind of interested in, because like once the glitches started coming and the skips started coming, I felt like people were really invigorated by it, and I know I was, and like that's what really hooked me on those threads. Just kind of seeing all these interesting things come out of the game that I didn't expect.
So there was like this 5-hour time that was like held up as the thing, and then people started discovering more glitches and realizing that it could go way further down, and it sort of opened everything up, and that's kind of was really exciting, and that kind of helped get you involved in it, would you say? Yeah,
in 2007, I actually was the first person to figure out how to leave the forest without beating the first dungeon. And that method, there's actually a whole bunch of ways to do it. I was like the first person to find any method to escape. So that was really cool. At the time I found it, it wasn't really useful yet, but it was later when more stuff got discovered.
Yeah, and also all the strategies around the, like, what is referred to as any %, which is just basically complete the game without get to the end of the game without meeting any of the other milestones, like, is based around stuff that's done in that first dungeon in the forest, right?
Yeah. Well, any percent as it is now, yeah, it's crazy. It's 17 minutes long. 17 minutes and 9 seconds is the record currently.
What was the... So you had, like... Sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. You had set, like, this, like, big milestone record, and what... like a few years ago. What was that time?
That was 18 minutes and 10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So that's a minute slower than the current time.
Okay.
And the route's completely different, which was actually mind-blowing to me, because the game, we're talking 2014, so the game had already gone through like 10 years of scrutiny to figure out a lot of things. And I kind of thought that maybe there wasn't much else to find, especially because if you're trying to beat it so fast, you're only like touching a small part of the game. So there's not really much to play with. There's not much to work with to like find more ways to do it faster. But it turns out there was a whole new mind-blowing thing discovered like around the beginning of 2015.
And that you had stopped running the game after you set that record? Because I remember the video you saying like, I don't think anyone will break this record, like, because of the level of execution and the level of luck that you had.
Yeah, it actually was beaten with the same route by a Swedish runner named Jodenstone. Beat it by 3 seconds.
Yeah, but that is fairly... that's foreseeable that someone could beat it.
Well, I made a 4-second error in the run, and I was like kind of beating myself up, not sure if I should like keep pushing the grind further or if I should stop. And I kind of just decided I should stop, because I guess it was really mentally draining at the time, because I was just like waking up, and then see, at this point I was like very established. There's thousands of people watching these attempts every day. I'm just doing it like every day. So wake up, plan my day around streaming this speedrun of this game, trying to beat it in like low 18 minutes.
So let's go back a little bit. So you got involved with Zelda Speedrunning, and then you were involved with starting the site Speedruns Live. When did that happen?
Well, before Speedruns Live, there was ZeldaSpeedruns.com, which is a site that I started, and basically those Speed Demos Archives threads, they were like really massive for Ocarina of Time. Like there were huge threads, hundreds of pages of posts.
Ocarina of Time is also like one of the most popular games of all time, so that's probably part of it.
Yeah. And so, decided to have some forums and like a website specifically built to kind of like be an archive of data, because I had already in 2008 I decided to... There's this really intricate glitch in Ocarina of Time called reverse bottle adventure, where you get a bottle instead of a sword. So like on your B button you have a bottle, and then when you catch different items, the game writes memory to the wrong location. So you can actually start to manipulate certain aspects of your inventory by writing like bytes where they should not be written to.
How did people discover this stuff?
Someone named Kazooie from Finland ended up messing with this old steal the fishing rod glitch, and if you have the fishing rod, basically you can get out of the mini game where you go fishing, and then you have the fishing rod, and then you get in water and it sets some sort of temporary state to your B button, and basically you can set the value of your B button to 0, which is the Deku stick. And then there's another glitch where you could overwrite items that you had 0 of with a bottle. So you could duplicate a bottle over your B button.
Okay, so it's like layering sort of a few different glitches that were found on top of each other.
Yeah, and then if you do all that, then suddenly you can start to notice that different aspects of your inventory are becoming like they're showing values they're not supposed to have. And so it's kind of a mystery, and I was really fascinated by it. And so I really broke it down and like kind of studied the glitch and tried to figure out every possibility. And then I ended up finding this memory searching program called like T-Search like forever ago. And I used it to like figure out which memory addresses are like doing what. And so I ended up making this big chart of every single possible thing you could do. And that was kind of right before I made ZeldaSpeedruns.com. And then we could add not just that information, but like every trick that we found, like every sequence break, like every exploit could be like archived in detail.
How long ago was this?
That was 2009, I think.
Okay, so like, do you think a lot of these games are so, especially like the N64 ones? Because I noticed there's this YouTuber who does videos about Super Mario 64 where he goes like super into detail and tries to like figure out how to beat, you know, certain things with only pressing one button or something like that. And there was this whole thing about there being like parallel universes, and like, and I guess my impression is part of the reason that exists is, especially with older games, maybe in order to fit what they had on the cartridge, or just especially with like Mario 64 and Zelda, which are like 3D games but relatively new 3D, they have to make a lot of compromises to fit that amount of data and that amount of stuff in the space that they had, which causes some like effects, which causes like glitches and stuff. And obviously when they're testing for the game, they try and fix that stuff. But especially with a lot of those older games, it's so impossible to predict, and they don't have like solid technical sort of skills to know what can be sort of manipulated and taken advantage of. Plus they would probably never assume that. So it seems like a lot of those older games are a lot more sort of porous, like they're more easy. It's just more easy to find that stuff. It's more easy to kind of get through. Because I noticed with like that Zelda in particular, I mean, one of the things that's so exciting about that speedrun is that there's just so much stuff that you can do. Like there's that category that's called all dungeons that like just involves warping around the game and just totally breaking it in various points. And it doesn't seem like that's as much the case with newer stuff, but I don't know. Is that, would you say that's the case?
I tend to agree with you. I think newer games, you don't find some of the same magnitude of, like, sometimes there's some pretty severe glitches or like ways to skip to the end or whatever, but I guess in some ways games are done differently now, and so some of those types of glitches you don't really see as much anymore. And just different things have been improved too, like collision detection. Yeah,
it's also maybe like best practices or something people get used to. The certain things become standard industry practice once they kind of know how to deal with some of these issues, which is like, I don't know. One thing that I noticed with, watching streams and those like games done quick streams is a lot of people will be like, like, LOL, this game was programmed so great, so that's why I can, skip it. They're like kind of making fun of the programmers being bad, but like, that's like what makes them so interesting to watch, as a speedrunning thing. Like some of my favorite speedruns are of totally easy to break games.
Yeah, and like keep in mind, like some of these glitches, they're not found even after like 10 years of people trying to break it, and then finally they find it. So it's not really like, haha, the programmers didn't do a good job. It's more like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff's really hard to find.
It's true.
And it's too much to expect like all that stuff to be ironed out, especially in like those earlier games, I think.
Well, and they work on the game for, however long, but it's not like they have necessarily the resources to test and do all this stuff unless you're like, I mean, they probably some of the bigger companies do at this point, but maybe they just don't care. I mean, like, the thing is, like, especially now, it's like, it kind of seems like almost it's a way to get people interested in your game, like speedrunning, and and glitches are a part of that. So I guess if I were a developer, I'd almost feel like if it were really easy to skip a part, then that's one concern. But if it's like you have to do a lot of very specific things that's not easy to do, like it's kind of like, it's just kind of like, wow, that's cool. It's like a different way of looking at the universe and the game or whatever that is totally not intended, but still, I don't know. I think that's interesting. And I guess like my guess is the perspective of the developers, they probably really like that,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's interesting to contrast, because I'm running The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild now, which does not have nearly as many exploits. Like, there are some things you can do, but it's not like you're warping around the game all over the, like, madly with crazy glitches and like exploiting memory addresses. It's kind of more, it's more glitch free. I mean, there are some things, but it's not so like severely glitched, and that's okay. And like, I don't think that the game has to have these kinds of glitches to be interesting, but those glitches certainly can be interesting, and they can lead to really interesting things.
Well, I think that's what like made me interested in watching speedruns again, when I like rediscovered that there was a big community around it. Was like I remember talking to like a roommate of mine and being like, oh, they do all these cool glitches of these games, and he's like, that's not speedrunning. That's speedrunning is you just go through the game really fast. You can't. Were there like sort of like existential or whatever arguments about that? Was that like a subject of conflict where people are like, I mean, I know there's like glitchless and glitchless and glitch categories or whatever for a lot of games, probably for that reason. But like, I don't think that's as much of a debate now, but it seemed like a really big debate. Like,
well, there's kind of like, okay, there's like all these speedrunners, and a lot of them kind of look at the game like, well, we're going to start the game, there's an endpoint or there's a goal to achieve, and then basically you're just sending controller input to the game, and you can, and it's hard to define a glitch sometimes. Sometimes it's difficult to like cleanly define what counts as a glitch or not. And so a lot of runners would almost make fun of like the things you might see in like a comments section on a speedrun, where people are like, this is cheating, this is not legitimate. Like a lot of speedrunners might make fun of that attitude, and maybe there's a bit of elitism in it too, but it's just like, I don't know how to say this.
I think there are like competing ideas. Like, there's this idea that speedrunning is about executing things really well and just is the game intended, and then there's another attitude that's like it's just about getting from one point to another in the fastest way possible. But it is the kind of thing where it's the speedrun becomes about someone successfully executing like a glitch that helps them skip 5 or 10 minutes of a game instead of like be really good at the game. But then if you do a run so many times, it's not like you're even good at the game. I mean, it's not even about being good at the game, because you have it so memorized that,
Yeah, that's the thing with speedrunning, is like, when your route is very clearly defined and you know exactly what's going on. Yeah, like when you think of like playing a game, oh god, I'm really bad at like wording this. I'm trying to think of how to word this. Okay, it's like for Breath of the Wild, for example, like what I'm doing now, it's like, at the moment, like there's a whole lot of things I could be doing. Like there's a lot of shrines, I don't really know what's going on in them, because I haven't, I've played them once, but only once, and like I haven't gone back to them really. And like there's a lot of different aspects of the game that I haven't messed around with too much yet, despite playing it for so long. But I've been focusing so much on the run that I'm doing, and so that's like a very narrow focus. I'm like focusing only on what's relevant for the run, and everything outside of that is kind of almost discarded. And it's not that I'll discard it forever. Like I'm probably gonna like, you know, do more stuff with the game later. But in specifically talking about this one run that I'm working on, anything that doesn't affect the run becomes pretty irrelevant. So a lot of maybe like the gameplay skill or like I don't know how you define it, but aspects of the game may be neglected when you're speedrunning.
Yeah.
And I think that is what those comments are upset about, because like there are parts to the game that are simply just not relevant to the run, especially when there's like large skip glitches. And so of course it's not just about beating the game as fast as possible always. There's all sorts of categories, and that gets into its own large debate about, you know, what category do you run, and like, and then, you know, people create different leaderboards, and if they want to like rank each other, and then deciding what counts, and like so how to time it, and like all the politics.
Categories are dependent on the fact that people want to have different experiences while playing the game. Partially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back, when did you start? When did after you started Zelda Speedruns, when did Speedruns Live come about, and when did also like streaming become a big part of? So how did that stuff grow?
Okay, so I'd say these things came about very close to each other in terms of time. So we had Zelda Speedruns. We were still kind of investigating the game. Some people were starting to work on more runs. Segmented runs started to fall off a little bit because we started to want to do like one sitting, beat the game. And actually there was a whole, sorry, I'm a little bit of a tangent, but like there's a whole thing there too, because like according to the Speed Demos archive rules, like single segment runs could not save and load. So they had to remain in the game the whole time and not go back to like the title screen ever. And not use the reset button on the console. And that was actually kind of an issue with Ocarina of Time, because in 2008 it was discovered you could skip the Door of Time. So you could, I'm pretty sure that was 2008. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. But
is that like weird glitch with a lot of different very specific movements that people do?
There's some specific movements, and then you basically
the pause buffering. Yeah,
you a lot of people pause buffer to do the jump slash, to like, because it's like precise timing, and if you fail it, then it's bad. But now I think nowadays some people don't. It's like it's not too bad, but
yeah, that just means pausing the game to find a specific frame of animation so that you can like get a very precise movement. Basically, that's what pause buffering is. Anyway, I'm just explaining that to anyone listening.
And what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying.
Yeah, I was talking about the history of like when Speedruns Live started, and
right. So I was just going into this thing because once the Door of Time was skipped, you were actually stuck on the other side of it as Adult Link unless you save warped, or if you got the hover boots, which was really slow, and so people were kind of disagreeing with the rules, and then we kind of just broke off into our own communities. Zelda Speedruns had different rules than Speed Demos Archive or whatever. And then from Zelda Speedruns, we all started to do races against each other. They started to be really interesting. Like it started with some different challenges, like get all the Great Fairy rewards, or just like different goals in the game. And then later on, it just kept growing, and then it wasn't just Zelda anymore. It started to become other games too, like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario 64 or Super Monkey Ball. And so we were doing these races on IRC, and we had like a little bot called RBA bot, because at first it was just a calculator for the RBA glitch in Ocarina of Time, but then some my friend Giano, I don't really talk to him anymore, but he ended up coding some like functionality into it to keep track of like the races. And then, you know, because we started to play more than just Zelda, like at first he wanted to bring like a duplicate bot into another IRC channel called Mario. And I was like, wait a minute, no, because this concept could be extended to any single game. Like, it doesn't have to be Mario or Zelda. And so I came up with the name Speedruns Live, designed the logo, put up a little site, and we set up the IRC channel. We got the bot working better, and we just started to race different games. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. Streaming had had started up by then.
When was this?
I'm thinking it actually started in 2009, 2010. I think 2009 at first. I wasn't streaming right away. But Gianna, who I mentioned, was became the biggest speedrun streamer for a while.
On the internet? Like,
yeah, because there was only
did Twitch exist at that point?
No,
okay.
No. Actually, we started on Ustream.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
And then a little while later, we went to Justin TV. We switched to Justin TV, and then Justin TV became Twitch TV.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember the first MagFest, which is a music and gaming convention that I was at, was actually where the first like Games Done Quick event was at, which I guess was the beginning of 2010.
Yeah, I think people were like meeting up at MagFest, and then they wanted to do a marathon, and so that was also starting up at the same time.
Cool. So when did it kind of start growing? So I know that at a certain point, you were when it became Twitch, that you were the most popular speedrunner on Twitch. When did that happen? How did that happen?
Okay, so I remember in 2011, I was doing a 24-hour streaming marathon to beat an Ocarina of Time record for completing all the dungeons and Ganon's trials and the game. And we called it the MST Speedrun because you got the medallions from the temples, you got the spiritual stones, and you also completed the trials. And so that was kind of like a genre, a category of Ocarina of Time speedrunning that was loosely based off of this older run that Kazooie did a long time ago that actually got... it didn't have door time skip back then because it wasn't found yet. But basically just instead of skipping a bunch of the game, doing everything. Because it turned out you could actually skip a bunch of dungeons pretty easily, and like you could skip the trials and that cuts off a bunch of time, and it felt like the rest of that, you know, we wanted to play through the dungeons. They were interesting, and there's actually some cool tricks involved because it turns out getting to the Shadow Temple early, you could get the hover boots early, and then you could use the hover boots in the other temples, which could be used for like time savers. But so I was just doing runs, like a more modern version of that run that included door time skip and then completing child dungeons as adult Link. And so I was streaming that. And, you know, Ocarina of Time was a really popular game, and people actually took a big interest in it because I was doing all this stuff that people had not really seen before. Speedrunning was not like...
It was an insular community.
Yeah, it was not nearly as widespread as it is now. So back then it was like, I don't know, it just like started to hook people. And during the 24-hour marathon, someone who worked at Justin TV decided to front page me. So I got like put on the front page. I think I got about 1,000 people watching. And then eventually they decided to give me some partnership thing, and that lets you run advertisements to make some money. And so suddenly this thing that I was doing that was really fun could generate some revenue doing it, and the community was picking up steam. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I started.
And then they turned into Twitch, and Twitch, when did Twitch like have a model to where, you know, any sort of, you could when did they have their subscription model to where you can just subscribe to
I think that was 2012.
Okay.
I think they added that.
And so you started making a living through streaming at some point, right? Because
Yeah.
of that.
So, yeah, like in 2012, I think I realized that instead of trying to do random freelance graphic design stuff.
You had graduated from college and like you went to college, right?
Yeah, I went to college, I graduated. And then right when I graduated is when like I launched Speedruns Live.
Okay.
So I guess that was 2011. But we were streaming stuff before that. And then yeah, I don't know. Speedruns Live got really popular, the races were really popular. I feel like once money got involved, Giano kind of dipped from it and ended up so like at the time he was the most popular speedrunner. Well, actually, that's not actually true because I think in Japan there was someone named, I think it was Batora. I can't remember if it was Batora, but someone in Japan had like a huge audience too, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine that probably in Japan there was a bigger audience for this stuff because of like Nintendo. Like I remember that hearing about that like Zelda satellite view game that had like competition that was built into it.
Oh yeah, I don't even know much about that actually.
But yeah, I think that there's like stuff like that, and also like the player base for games in Japan has always just been very hardcore because games are such video games are such a huge part of their culture. So I can imagine that like there's a lot of that functioning separately in Japan. But so were there a lot of people in that community who kind of felt weird or skeeved out or whatever by the point when it started getting popular and money started getting involved, or were most people?
Well, I guess a couple things happened. Like Giano decided to kind of not stream as much, I guess. And he could have made a bunch of money streaming, but I guess he liked to keep it like really like having fun with friends and like not trying to like stream for money. I think he just thought money would maybe suck the fun out of it or something. And so I think that's just my impression. I don't actually know what he thinks about it, but he ended up just going off to learn like programming, which he already got some experience working on different aspects of Speedruns Live because we like co-founded it together. But I just kept streaming and like other people started streaming and a lot of people started to get partnership on Twitch, and it just kind of became like this force, I guess, like speedrunning as a force.
And that was like really what was it, like one of the biggest audiences for Twitch at the time, or?
It was big. It was like me and Siglemic, the two biggest streams, and like sometimes that viewer number would be 5 digits long. So yeah, it was crazy. After I did that whole Ocarina of Time stuff for a while, and then
did you do that until you had set that record? And then
no, actually, okay, so what happened in 2011, I did that. I was working on that like 24-hour marathon and all sorts of other miscellaneous stuff. And then for AGDQ 2012, I did a run, an MST run, just like I was running before. And then after that, I decided to. Well, I didn't. This actually came really naturally, but like
AGDQ, by the way, is Awesome Games Done Quick, which is a charity stream. So that wasn't very big at the time.
I think there were still. The viewership might have peaked at like, I don't know.
But was it live stream? It was live.
It was live stream,
okay.
But it was a lot smaller back then.
Okay.
It was pretty much only speedrunners at the event. There were like no fans.
Okay.
But after that one, I was like, just kind of feeling different games. I was playing some Super Monkey Ball, and I think I was playing some like Symphony of the Night or something. But then, on Speedruns Live one day, I decided to do a Wind Waker race where we would just race to like the end of one of the dungeons. And so I started doing that, and I actually kind of fell in love with it. And it was like really, I don't know, I just like enjoyed it and I wanted to get into it more. And so that actually kind of became my new focus starting in like 2012. Or sorry, yeah, starting in 2012. It was weird though, because like after AGDQ 2012, in Ocarina of Time, there was wrong warp that got discovered. So like suddenly the thing that I worked on and that I held the record for and all the work that I did there easily becomes obsolete when you can suddenly skip these long post-dungeon cutscenes and use them to warp to different parts of the game. So once that was discovered, I actually did not really go back so much. I actually just kind of wandered off into Wind Waker, and that became my next like big thing that I worked on.
And you also ran like Castlevania 64 and some other games, right?
Yeah. There's an Ocarina of Time speedrunner named Christian F23 who on Twitch, I watched him like trying to figure out skips for Castlevania 64 and do some speedruns of it. And I was like, this actually looks really fun. Like, and after watching his stream, I was just like, I'm just going to buy a cartridge of this like right now. And so I just bought the cartridge and then I learned it and started running it.
Yeah, I think the first time that I was aware of you was at seeing you on one of those AGDQ or one of those GDQ streams. I think you played Castlevania 64. But when did that stuff really start to... Because I know that like GDQ like grew really fast too. When was the point where you felt like this was becoming almost like, you know, this really big thing and almost like mainstream, or at least becoming like a bigger part of the sort of culture around video games?
So I would say that the end of 2012, I guess 2012 is when it really fucking sorry, when
yeah,
it really
swear,
all right, when it really hit 2012, because the Wind Waker grind grew into this massive thing, and like I don't know, it got so big, and like my stream got so huge, and suddenly instead of like, oh no, what am I gonna do for money after college, it's like people are pouring into my stream in the thousands, and it's just like this massive like force. And like another thing with the monetization of speedrunning, I guess, is that, you know, I kind of became a target of a lot of jealousy. Like I would go into different speedrunners chats, and people would be like shit talking me like at random without me even being there.
Because you're the person who's like the most visible and making the most money.
Yeah. And I don't know, like the Wind Waker stuff was crazy, because actually it's funny because Giano was the last person on the record before I started getting into it, because Giano, well, basically Wind Waker started to get broken open too. There's a thing called zombie hovering where you die and then you like mash the button really fast, this jump attack button.
I like the name of that, zombie hovering.
Yeah, because it's like you're dead and you're hovering through the air, and
it's
it was
like very existential.
It was kind of fun because the Game Boy Advance tingle tuner thing in Wind Waker was useful, because when you'd zombie hover, it's like once you touch the ground you're dead. So even if you like fly up to like a higher ledge that you're not supposed to be to, if you land you're dead, so it doesn't really help you. But if you use tingle with the Game Boy Advance, you can heal at any moment. And so that's what we did. We just like used the Game Boy Advance to heal, and it kind of became its own kind of little cool thing.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
you're like using a different peripheral, which I guess comes into play with some of the Breath of the Wild stuff too, and the amiibos and all that.
Yeah, there's some people draw connections like that with like this external thing.
So this stuff started becoming big, it started growing, and you also kind of sensed some jealousy. So when was like the peak of it for you, and then when did you kind of pull away from it a little bit?
Okay, so besides having the big stream, I was also still like heading Speedruns Live and I wanted to like keep rolling out more features and do different things, and like I was kind of a figurehead in the community. And one of the things that I wanted to make were leaderboards. There was all sorts of dramas that happened, like, oh god, okay, so like Miss Shinema contacted me and some other people about like a potential internet show speedrun thing, and I like heard them out, and like basically instead of having some speedrun show, we came up with the idea of having like races with prize money. And so then we tried to basically set that up and then kind of reveal it one day. And so when we revealed it, it got like horrific backlash because Machinima has a really bad reputation, and also the aspect of prize money in speedrunning rubbed some people the wrong way, and also because they knew that we were gonna get some money as well for like putting it on.
Yeah, participating in it.
Yeah, so it just like really rubbed people the wrong way. And so after like staying up the whole night after we revealed it, I decided to cancel it because everyone was pissed off. And so that was like one instance of like a lot of bad drama. Another instance of drama was like who is operating the Speedruns Live IRC channel. Like there's kind of like a culture of bullying.
Yeah, power struggles and
yeah, there's like power struggles and bullying, and yeah, so there was like mod drama, you know.
Yeah,
that's like prevalent in lots of online communities.
Yeah, online, yeah.
And then another thing that really was strong was the leaderboards that I wanted to make. So another thing that happened too was you know, as the website and everything expanded, like we kind of needed more technical expertise because we didn't really know that much. And so, you know, we had more people involved in like coding and stuff. And one of the features that got rolled out was called SRL Seasons, which is like these different seasons of races where there'd be different rankings like every season or whatever. And that kind of flopped, and actually it was kind of broken, and like it never ended up like working or going on to season 2. It was just season 1 forever, and like it just kind of flopped. And so people were like making fun of that a lot, and like it hurt SRL's brand or whatever. And then when I wanted to do the leaderboards, Gianna was like, fuck this, because you know, there's too much between all these games and all the complications with all of them. So like, just fuck this. But I still wanted to do it. So I tried to do it. And like, I didn't have back-end coding knowledge with like databases and stuff, but I did have like a lot of front-end ability to make things look nice and display nicely. And so I was happy to do all of making it look good. And also I wanted to kind of be the visionary to like have the vision of how it should work. And I talked with like the whole community. Well, first we're talking more privately, noting different problems with different speedrun communities regarding like trying to set up like a leaderboard structure and like where the issues were and like how categories are defined for speedrunning. And like we started to like, I kind of had like this vision in my mind of like making it really good. And so at first we talked about it, and then there was some backlash, and then I was like, basically people didn't agree with certain features of it, and it's very political on how the categories should work, and it's like really complicated. But then I started to like, I was still talking about it like on my stream all the time to thousands of people listening. I was like, we should get these leaderboards, and this is like, we should do this and that. And like, you know, in the IRC channel, I set up like this room to discuss how they should work and like find every edge case and figure out exactly where all the problems were and how to make it work best for everyone. And I was like really focused on this for a long time. And in the meantime, someone else was also kind of building a thing and kind of offered to kind of put it together. And like, I saw what they were making. And and I didn't agree with their vision, but I was too afraid to tell them my real feelings about it. And so I kind of beat around the bush and didn't really tell them how I felt about it. And then I kind of went behind their back. And then down the line, a few months later, when I was trying to put this thing together, and then they found out that I was still trying to put it together differently, and I was too much of a coward to like talk about how I felt with them. That was a really bad moment, and there was a huge amount of drama from it. And I think I was never able to get people to kind of be invigorated like I was to create what I wanted to create. And I think that I was also arrogant in kind of...
You were mad with power.
I was mad with power. I was mad with power, and I was a coward because I couldn't talk to them how I really felt.
I mean, that's like a tremendous amount of responsibility to be put on you, and the fact that there's all of a sudden money involved and things. It's kind of hard to anticipate that stuff would necessarily grow to the extent that it would. I mean, some of this makes me think of like when I was on the website OC Remix, which is like a video game music arrangement website, and it started to get more popular, and like composers from video games started to get involved, and people started to sell albums and all that kind of drama. But anyway, it's very familiar drama to me as like, and anyone who's been in like online communities or cultures that have sort of grown out of the internet. It's kind of it's a scary kind of place to be in. And on the one hand, you have a lot of power in your position, but on the other hand, like that's just a tremendous amount of responsibility to be shouldering at like, in your like early to mid 20s.
Yeah. And I was like living it too. I was like on it every day. Like I was there every day. Like I was either streaming or in the IRC or like talking to people trying to build stuff, or like I was just completely immersed in that world. Like that was my life.
When did that stop, or when did that sort of turn over?
Okay, so by the end of 2013, it got to the point where I sort of was abandoning, like it felt like my power was kind of slipping away regarding Speedruns Live, and that I couldn't get the things done that I wanted to do, and that I had hurt people along the way. So I decided to kind of, I guess, focus on my stream and just I actually made I got drunk, and then I made a proclamation that I would get the record back for Commander Keen 4.
I didn't even know that you played Commander Keen 4. That's funny.
Also, that I would get the record for Castlevania 64 as both characters. And that I would do Ocarina of Time any percent and get the record for that. And then, after I said that in my drunk speech, I said that I would go on with Ocarina of Time and go through every single like category and try my best in all of them. And so that was my plans for 2014. And at that point, it's kind of like, well, my Speedruns Live plans kind of didn't work out, and it was really painful. And so I'm just going to do these things. And in 2014, I did those things. I played Commander Keen 4 a whole bunch, and I got the record back. And then I played Castlevania 64, and I got the record back, and I did it for both characters. And then I started to play Ocarina of Time. And the Ocarina of Time was months of grinding. Eventually I got that run, 18 minutes and 10 seconds.
And that's the video that ended up going viral on Kotaku or whatever.
Yeah, I think it did.
Yeah, because I mean, I saw it. I remember seeing it, and I remember people sharing it around. Like it was definitely a really big deal. And that was at the end of 2014, or
that was mid 2014.
Okay, mid 2014.
And then I also picked up a marijuana habit around then, and I I was really trying to get commentary for that run, and I was like really beating myself up over it, but I ended up putting something out, but I kind of didn't like the commentary that I came up with, but other people seemed to like it, but I don't know, I just didn't like it. And then I messed around with a few other games. Like I was playing some Beetle Adventure Racing. It almost felt like a victory lap or something. I got all the records for all the tracks in Beetle Adventure Racing, which was that very game that I had run 10 years prior, which is kind of cool. I also messed around with Goldeneye. I got some records in that. And then it was like, well, is it time to play Ocarina of Time more? In the meantime, my record was slowly being chipped away at. And it would fall like 6 months later.
When they found the new,
No, actually. Before it was discovered.
Oh, we were talking about this earlier. You said you made a 4-second error and then...
So I was doing this difficult trick called the Mito skip, where you try to get past Mito, who's guarding the Deku Tree. And I did it, but when I paused to equip my item, I also use that as a pause buffer to check if the frame is right. And I paused to equip the item. The frame was wrong. So I unpause, and then I pause again, but the frame didn't advance, so it was the same frame again. And then I unpaused, then I paused again, and then it was the right frame, and then I continued. So it costs 4 seconds.
I see, and then somebody took advantage of that and was able to beat your time because of that.
Yeah. So if my time was 4 seconds faster, it was still totally beatable, but it would have been that much harder. And if you want to compare, I did about 1,206. I think I did 1,269 attempts. Each of those has a 3-minute intro, so it's like a lot of cutscenes. But
it's pretty much just waking up and doing it.
Yeah.
Every day, all day.
Yeah. And then my run was beaten on run number 2,600 or something by this other runner. So it was a lot of work to put in, and I think if I miraculously had such a clean run that I didn't make that 4-second mistake, the number of attempts to beat it might be really high, but there was still some improvements to be made. You can be really critical and find little things. There's a more difficult strategy to get to Kakariko that was 1 second faster that I did not do.
And then they found alternate strategies.
Yeah, so then the category got broken open with a whole new glitch that just completely... Well, at first the glitch was found and it was random. It was a luck-based thing because you needed a specific item drop from an enemy that you kill. And if you didn't get the drop, then your run was dead and you had to start over. And the percent chance of it working was kind of low, in the mid-20s, I think. So, a lot of runs would die. And I considered running it after that got found, but kind of just decided against it.
So after that, at some point, I don't know how much you wanted to talk about this, but you decided to transition and do all that stuff, and you're still streaming while you're doing all that, and you're kind of talking about some of the issues that you're having with the community and with just in general more openly, and that also attracts an incredible amount of backlash, which it seems was already building before because of how popular you were or whatever, but because you're trans and this is a post Gamergate world too, because I'd imagine this started happening a little bit right after some of that stuff happened. And I don't know. So what happened during that period, if you want to talk about it? And then I remember talking to me before, you said you had some sort of injury for a while, but then you've gotten back into speedrunning more recently. So yeah, if you could talk about sort of some of the stuff that happened in that period, I guess the last few years.
So in mid 2014, after I got that run, it all kind of changed after that. When I was when I was trying to get back in Ocarina of Time to kind of fulfill my drunk plans from a long time ago to like do all the other categories, I started playing Ocarina of Time and it felt like, well, I'm just doing what I was already doing, and it's like actually the same. Like there's nothing novel happening. Like sure, it's like maybe this runs like an hour longer, but it's really just like it's very much the same thing. I go on to this emulator called Moopin and find angles and find consistent strategies, and then just like practice and grind the muscle memory.
You're just getting bored of it.
It was I guess I was just getting bored of it, and like I decided, I kind of like woke up outside of my little game world, and I was way more fascinated by other things. I started like staying up really late at night, like reading about different things, just like kind of like a mad scavenger hunt, going through like reading about physics and different things. And it just felt like very uninterested in like what I was kind of supposed to be doing. I would get high on weed, and then I would just like go online and like I would like think about reality, and like I would just be like totally in this other place. And I was really starting to change as a person. And at one point I felt like I had like a spiritual experience, but right before that happened, I felt like there's like this ego death that happened. I was like laying in bed, and I just felt like I felt completely empty, and that like I was just part of everything. And I don't know, it was strange. And
You're following and you're not picking your own path or whatever.
Part of it. I don't know. I just felt like kind of empty or just connected with everything. And then I remember I went outside and I was like looking down the street, and there was like there's like, you know, thousands of leaves like to one side of the sidewalk. On the other side of the sidewalk there's like a row of cars, and they both felt like completely connected, like both perfectly natural occurrences. I can't really explain it. Everything just felt like as one, and I felt at one in peace with the world. And I was just in this like, I felt like I was high for like 20 hours straight, even though I didn't like get high again. But I was just in this totally different mindset. And I don't know. It felt like I don't know. It felt like different state of awareness, or like my perspective on life just kind of changed. And
so you're still streaming at this point, or like you?
I wasn't prioritizing streaming so much. When I was streaming, it was like I was just having fun with Beetle Adventure Racing or whatever.
Okay.
But
I know that after this point you would like stream, but you would stream just more of like a video diary type thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like, yeah, it's like, I don't know, 2015 comes around, and you know, my hands are definitely getting worse. Smash for Wii U came out. I used to be a Smash tournament player for Melee for like a long time, and I really loved it. And that was before I got, you know, into streaming speedruns. I would do that.
This is Super Smash Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Super Smash for Wii U came out. I was excited. Played it online a whole bunch. And then I realized that I couldn't really commentate it so well, and that people weren't like super invigorated, but I felt like kind of like a deep satisfaction just playing it. So I would still stream it. Just I started not using microphone. I started not using webcam. I just disappeared. And I had some trans friends, and there's a part of me that was like jealous of that, of them, and that in 2012 I kind of questioned myself with that, because I had like this, like I started back in like 2012 I started painting my nails, and it's like I asked myself if I was trans back then, but I don't know, I just didn't.
It's kind of easy to just ignore it if it's not in your face or whatever.
Yeah, and at the same time, I was like building a male identity on like the internet, and
Yeah,
people started to like me, and like I started to get really popular.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of this weird thing, and then like later it kind of resurfaces. I don't know, and then sooner or later it's like, well, shit, I should be on HRT right now, and eventually took steps to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then like you came out at some point was it on one of your streams or?
Yeah. Or no, I made a tweet, Carpe Diem, and I posted a picture of the estradiol and spironolactone bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I felt about it. Seize the day.
Yeah.
But, yeah. One thing that happened in 2015 as well was the 2015 Nintendo World Championships, which actually felt like this kind of culmination of like having gone through life with all these Smash tournaments and speedrunning and doing all this stuff, and then finally ending up being invited and going through all of that and kind of getting lucky at some parts of that, and ended up meeting Miyamoto, which is kind of like this. I don't know.
That's pretty awesome.
It was really awesome. It felt like a dream come true, and like it's so weird because like even though I felt like it was a dream come true, like I go online afterwards and everyone's making fun of me because I was terrible at the last level. I couldn't wall jump. I was not familiar with New Super Mario Bros. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but but like it was so weird because like for me it was like a dream come true, but then online everyone was just like tearing me down over my final performance or whatever.
Yeah, that's a experience that I definitely have had with like some of being involved with like indie game stuff, going to an event, you know, or something where I hang out with people and have a good time, and then some horrible thing happens online. Like actually, I don't know how much I've talked about this, but like when Gamergate happened, I was going on, like it literally happened the day that I was going on a trip, like a vacation with some other friends from games who were like, one of whom was like being targeted during Gamergate. And it kind of ruined our vacation, as you might expect. Actually, multiple people on that trip got harassed. I never really did, which is kind of crazy. But, well, I mean, I sort of did. But given how close I was to that stuff. But, yeah, I totally know what you mean. Of like that, I had a good trip. But, like, you know, thinking about the fallout and all that, the kind of craziness that's happening online, there's just a lot of jealousy. A lot of people are unhappy. There's so many sort of power dynamics that are shifting. And I mean, I think that's like kind of boiling up and creating this sort of resentment that ends up giving birth to like a lot of the right-wing reactionary stuff that exists now. And I mean, and I've noticed that you've totally been a target of some of that stuff. Like I saw some video like come up just randomly, like it was a recommended video about you on YouTube, and it was like basically like, I don't know, a hit piece or something, but it was just like it's like, how dare you stream and talk about your feelings or whatever. Like that's what it just felt like. It felt like it was like she's taking advantage of people because she's streaming and people are paying her money, and it's like, well, why? Like, you know, they can choose to not. I don't know. Anyway, we don't have to get into that a lot if you want to, but it seems like this perception of you as being like mentally unstable and begging for money sort of got created out of this or something.
I mean, there was like this kind of back and forth thing that happened where like, you know, I started getting harassed, and then I felt bad about that, or like I reacted to it. And then I started getting harassed more, and then I see that like all these people are starting to unfollow me, and like, to be fair, I guess it was very abrupt for people. I guess thinking back, like sometimes I really beat myself up that like I didn't like gradually, like, I don't know, things were like weird.
The things didn't happen more gradually.
Yeah, it felt like I just like
kind of reacted to everything that was happening just in the moment.
Yeah. And also that the transition was more gradual and transparent during those during 2015 when I was very like closed to everyone. So I don't know. You know, there's like the kiwi farms, and then Reddit and 4chan and YouTube.
I mean, by that point, there's dedicated harassment communities and networks that have been
kind of like
built from Gamergate.
The internet used to not
stuff.
be like this. Like, I know that, like, well, okay, just from my experience, it took until 2013 before I started feeling like the malice from the internet. And then it's ramped up since then, except actually, I want to say that, like, really recently, I haven't felt much harassment recently, and I think I've been kind of doing better. But I've definitely been like extremely hard on myself. I was addicted to reading comments about me, and I would read them all and be incredibly self-critical towards myself.
That's just like...
I was also coping with like using marijuana probably too frequently. I've since kind of quit. I'm not really... I don't know the last time I used it.
You had like a little injury for a while too, and
that's okay. That's the thing that was really frustrating, because like if my hands were perfectly okay, then I could just I could continue to kind of do what I'm doing with gaming.
I know this is a really common thing with esports and speedrunning too. Is like a lot of people burn out in their mid to late 20s because of injuries or because of just fatigue and stuff. Like I've heard. I don't know if this has ever been like officially done studies on this, but this is like totally a phenomenon that exists.
It absolutely is. There's like hacks in the Melee community who like had to see like a whole bunch of doctors because his like wrist is completely like messed up because of playing Smash, and then there's lots of speedrunners who get pain. I definitely got pain. Okay, here's the thing, like my hands right now, like I can hold the Joy-Cons pretty well. If I hold like a traditional controller and I play for like 2 hours, like it's starting to be painful. And like if I continue, it will get worse. And then if I continue, it'll get worse. And like the nature of speedrunning is that you spend like countless hours like working on this stuff. And so if your hands can't do it, then you're just kind of not able to really do anything. And so I decided that I wanted to do more things like just kind of vlog or whatever, because I didn't really know what else to do.
Yeah, and you still have all these Twitch subscribers. You're still making your living through it, so it's like that's your network. And
so I tried to do that. People unfollowed really a lot, and people were pissed that I was not speedrunning. People were not sympathetic about my hand issue. People were kind of bigoted, and people also felt really uneasy by me.
And the fact that you're trans and you're talking about your feelings now in a community that like no one, it's like taboo to ever talk about your feelings.
Another thing too is that like, after years of like actually finally starting HRT and everything, it made me like, I don't know, I was messing with my like kind of presentation a lot and my expression a lot, and I think I like...
You're figuring out in an extremely public way.
Yeah, and like I still am, but like back then it, there was some... it was a lot, it was a lot, and gosh, I don't know, it was a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, most people... Well, I won't say most people. It's probably not good to like... But a lot of people, like, they transition, they get involved, they presumably have some sort of community, or at the very least, even if it's online, it's a small sort of community they're sharing in the midst of, other people they know. And... I remember when I started transitioning, there was like a forum for it, and, people were supportive to each other. And of course, there was a lot of like bitchy and catty stuff too, as there is now on like trans and queer Twitter. But like, there's a little bit more of a resource dedicated to support. But you're in a situation where people follow you, where you already have a platform on a highly volatile sort of online space, and it's really easy for when people already have resentment of you for various reasons, maybe just the fact that you're popular, you know, it's really easy for you to just become that target. And that's your community, that's your support, but like there's so many power imbalances, so it means that like it's not equal, and I don't know, it's really weird to think about, because we like, I don't know, I think about like how you know, on Twitter and stuff, we used to just like give out our phone number, or like I used to just give out my phone number to people, because it's like, you know, who cares, like no one's ever gonna. And then like with all that Gamergate stuff, like, and the fact that people were leveraging that to harass people, anyone that they didn't like, you can't do that anymore. And you know, now there's like so much concern about security, and it never feels like it's enough. And I don't know, like, it's crazy to think about how quickly that changed, because it wasn't that way, you know. I mean, there was always harassment and that kind of doxing and that kind of stuff happening to some extent, but like it was happening on kind of corners of the internet, not, you know, like how it is now.
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything to add to that, but that was well said.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, well, we both grew up on the internet, so I mean, thankfully, I mean, I think the only reason like why some of the stuff that happened was less bad for me is I just didn't have like a huge popular platform, and when I transitioned, I was kind of in a period when I wasn't on the internet a lot, and it was before like social media got really big and, you know, all that other stuff. So it was just like I kind of did it on the DL and came back, and so a lot of people didn't know me or have like a super big impression of me beforehand. But you were just the opposite. Like you set a record, you've you've set a bunch of records, you've done all this stuff, you founded this community, and people know you, they know what you look like, and then you transition, and you know, they suddenly
it's like a lot built up kind of, and then
they like a lot. It's like you're basically a celebrity. I mean, it's basically like you're a celebrity who has transitioned now, and you know, people get used to your image being around, and now they have to deal with the fact that you're actually a different person. And
maybe that's kind of naive in thinking that like that people would like kind of believe in me regardless of like I don't know how to word it. I thought people would be there for me more, I guess, but I do have a really good kind of core community. Yeah, like I have, you know, like there are lots of people that I'm like kind of friends with, or like just like on my online community that I have like a Discord server, and like my stream, I get like a lot of familiar faces.
Yeah, I know people who definitely watch your stream, a lot of like trans people in particular, because it is like, you know, you're very visible, and it's just nice to have somebody who's a huge part of speedrunning and the community be visible and out there, you know, in spite of all the shit that you have gotten. I don't know, it's interesting to hear that you're getting less crap now. I mean,
it feels good. Like that. I mean, I don't know, I guess things can change, but I don't know, it feels like lately things have not been so bad.
So I guess one last question that I want to ask you is, how do you feel like the speedrun? Where do you feel like the speedrunning community is at now, and what is your sort of feelings on it, or what? And I guess also if you wanted to talk about any other interests or projects that you're working on too.
Yeah. So, you know, back then it was kind of closer together in that like there's like these big, like, I don't know, I guess gosh, how do I say this? It felt like the GDQ marathons and the Speed Demos archive community and Speedruns Live and all the people there felt very close together. And that I was kind of like on top of the world, kind of. I was mad with power, as you said. But now it feels like speedrunning has hit such like a large audience that it's more spread out now, and also with SRL kind of diminishing, and then some people getting really into the GDQ culture and some people shying away from it. It just feels like there's like different pockets of speedrunning. It's like more spread out and in some ways diminished, but probably bigger overall, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, being involved with the indie game space, it's kind of the same thing where it's a larger community now, but the centralizedness of certain people or voices is not as much anymore.
Yeah, and I guess what was the other part of the question?
So yeah, your impressions of the community now, and also other projects things that you're working on, or
yeah. So, well, regarding speedrunning, I'm really just focused on Breath of the Wild right now. Actually, I kind of got into Sonic Mania for a little while, but
yeah, I saw that on Twitter.
It turns out that like I kind of have a problem where this is really specific, but like there's this input spin dashing where you have to like rev up your spin dash, and to rev it up optimally, you need to press at least 6 buttons, maybe more if you want to be safe. And every button needs to be pressed in very short time, one after another. And if you're running individual levels like I was doing, then you want to really hit those 6 buttons really fast. And if you press them at the same time, it only counts as one, so you have to like hit them one after the other like really well. And so when I was playing with the Joy-Cons, like I couldn't really hit 3 of the jump buttons. I could only hit 2 of them. So I would just like roll my thumb back and forth, but that's kind of slow. And so it's kind of slowing me down. And I was like, maybe I need to figure out like a different controller or something. So I tried the Switch Pro controller. I even tried playing with it upside down because that would let my fingers rest on it better. But that started to hurt my wrist. And then like I was thinking that even if I got like the PC version and played on a keyboard, that would probably also hurt my wrist. And so I've been a little bit distant from that. So basically my only speedrunning project right now is Breath of the Wild, which I actually foresee myself really putting a lot more time into. And actually we're up to...
You're doing the all main quests run?
It's all main quests. I play on the harder difficulty, and I do not use the amiibo.
And you have the world record right now, don't you?
I do, and there's someone named Huanti who is like closing in. So I could lose the record like tomorrow potentially, but I'm also working on it, and like I'm working on like a new route, and it's kind of cool because like there's like different possible routes that seem to be really close in time. So I don't know, it's like the route's not really solidified.
So there's a lot that could change.
It's hazy.
So I remember talking to you earlier that you said that that like you feel like the most people still pay attention to like the N64 runs and stuff like that. Why do you think that is? Is it because either those games are just really familiar for people, or is it because they're so glitchy, or what do you think it is about it versus like, you know, a lot of the newer games?
There's a lot going on there. It's like there's a lot of reasons. For one thing, they're classics. So there's also a nostalgia factor. There's also the fact that they've been established as speedrun games by people like myself. Also, they do have that crazy glitchiness, and some people are still like really in love with that. Even though a lot of the runs, there's still like a lot of like, sometimes, you know, you see it 1,000 times. The routes get kind of like, you just see it a lot, and it's not very exciting anymore. But they've just kind of been established. But then I guess there's a kind of elitism that grows out of that, where it's like, these are the real speedrun games. These are classics, and they've been established, and there's a lot of runners for them. And so this is what you need to care about. And I think that's kind of a weird approach because, I don't know, there's like, you could speedrun any game, and like, it's not like these games that happen to be popular Nintendo games are like the end-all be-all of speedrunning.
My favorite speedruns oftentimes are like weird broken PC games because they have a lot of glitches in them, and they're also not popular. And also I have like an affinity towards weird PC games in general.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with a lot of that. So are you working on any other projects?
I'm working on a game it's like I haven't talked about it too much. It's just like this I've been working on it for a long time. It's kind of like a board game.
It's like a strategy game.
Yeah, kind of like chess or something. I'm happy with it, but also I have a lot more to do. And like, I don't know if I'd ever want to sell it, or like, I just feel like I kind of want to be in control of the project, so I can like, once again, I want to be the visionary. Like, I guess I can't help myself.
I mean,
but I mean, I guess I conceptualize this thing, and it's not really like trying to take ownership of like a hobby, you know, like speedrunning or whatever. It's not like I'm trying to take like, it's like kind of just my own thing, and like I want to make it good, but yeah.
Well, there's places you can, just like itch.io and websites, you can put out stuff for free and people will totally play it. Probably people will play it because you have a big audience too, or at least, you know.
Yeah, I might put it out for free and then just kind of organically grow like a little community of people who are into it. I guess I'm gonna do a tournament on Christmas. I might actually just I'll probably just stream the tournament.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So people could see it. And those are like really the two projects that I have, like the Breath of the Wild speedrunning, and then the game project. That's like really the two things that I'm working on. But with Breath of the Wild, it's not like I guess one of the biggest differences in this modern era of speedrunning for me is that I regret not saving a lot of my old streams, like back in the day. Like I did all these Wind Waker streams, all these Ocarina of Time streams, and all these other games. All these streams are like gone in history. They were never saved. So I kind of regret that. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with Breath of the Wild now is actually just simply record every single moment that I play it. Every single moment is streamed. Every single moment is saved and archived. And I have this massive archive of video. And it almost becomes like a diary of my life, kind of. It's kind of, it almost goes beyond speedrunning. It's kind of like its own kind of thing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's kind of maybe a different perspective I have with it now. And it kind of makes it more about the journey and not so much like, oh, I must break this final record and then say owned. You know, it's not really like that.
Yeah, it's trying to sort of reconstruct this community that oftentimes can be around very competitiveness into something that's like more about your life and things.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's partially like a solo thing. It's partially a collaborative thing. And it can be competitive too, but
cool. Yeah. So is there anything else you wanted to say before we go? I hope everyone listening has a good day. Wow, that's an insightful comment. Well, thank you, Narcissa, for being on. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of people will totally get something out of this conversation. So your Twitter is just Narcissa Wright, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'll link it in the, this description. And it's also twitch.tv/Narcissa Wright.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And you have a YouTube also.
Yep, which is, I guess, like a giant string of hex characters or something. Or like, I don't know.
We could probably find it on your
Yeah, you can just Google Narcissa Wright. You'll find my account.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on. This is a totally great conversation, and I hope people like it. Okay. Bye.